What is going on, everybody? I'm James Young with jamesyoungphotography.com, and this is Teach Me How to Lightroom. Today, we're talking about watermarks and how you can add them very easily in Lightroom. A lot of folks have been asking me about the watermark that I use on my Instagram, on my Facebook posts like that, how it's always in the same exact spot, and what action I use in Photoshop. And I tell them I actually do it in Lightroom, and it greatly increases my workflow and things like that. And people are like, what? Oh my goodness, how do you do this? I didn't know that this wasn't even super common knowledge. So I'm excited to show this to you guys. Now check this out. This really is not about whether you should or should not watermark your images. You guys can take that up with whatever deity you do or do not believe in. If you don't want to watermark your work, that's okay with me. If you do want to watermark your work and you want to make it easier on yourself, then this is the video for you. So check it out. The way you access your watermark library, as it were, is you click on the Lightroom menu, and then it's actually bam, right there, edit watermarks. So you go ahead and click that, and it's going to bring you to a screen with a ton of different options. Now, by default, it's just going to hook you up with like your first and last name. And this is all fine and dandy if you want to be like as vanilla as possible. But let's talk about some of these things. Image options we'll get to in just a second. But text options, everything here is pretty straightforward, and it's pretty cool with how many tools they equip you with to be able to work with this thing. So whether you want to change your font style, I'll go ahead and change it to kind of a fan favorite, one of the most iconic fonts in the face of the planet. We're talking Comic Sans. Outstanding style. You can do regular bold. Now this is going to be reliant on the font face that you choose, on how many different styles are available to choose from. Now your alignment is going to be pretty key, and we'll talk about why in just a second, other than the very obvious fact that you either want it left, middle, or right justified. We'll just leave it on the left for now. You could even change the color of the text should you so desire. Whatever. Let's just keep it somewhere in the white region just to keep it pretty normal. Here's where things kind of get a little interesting here. You can change your opacity. Now that's just going to be how see-through or not your watermark is going to be. Now, the further right you go, the closer to a solid color it's going to be. The more you go to the left, the more opaque things are going to be. Now, as we scroll down to this shadow section, this is where things get a little more fun. You may or may not notice that there is actually a shadow being cast on this text. And you can kind of manipulate some of the things that are going on with that shadow right here in all these sliders. Now, opacity is just how see-through that situation is going to be. So the further you go to the right, the more solid of a color it's going to be. The more you drag to the left, the more see-through or opaque it's going to be. So let's go ahead and just put it back over to 80. That's where the default is. Now this is where you're going to be able to see some of the modifications. And matter of fact, let's just scale this up really big. Let's make this watermark kind of a little more noticeable. And you can see the offset, it's going to literally move how far or how close that shadow is going to be. Then of course with your radius, it's going to add some blur to it. And as you scroll to the right, it's going to get more blurry and less defined as you scroll to the left. And the edge is going to be a lot more hard, a lot more defined. Now with the angle here, this is going to be the angle based on the radius and ultimately where the shadow is going to fall. This is all pretty straightforward. Then as we scroll down, we're going to get to the actual watermark effects, and opacity is going to be the same situation. So if you want a watermark that's a lot less abrasive than what we have going on here, you can scroll to the left, make it more opaque to the point where it's completely transparent, or you can have it set to the transparency or the opacity of your liking. Now, I like my watermarks to be there, but I don't want them to be taking away from the image. So we'll just leave that at 100%. Now, earlier in the video, you saw me click and drag this node up here just to make it a little bit larger, easier to see for you guys, the viewers. but this is linked to the proportional size under watermark effects here. And then of course, as you drag it to the right, it gets huge. As you drag it to the left, it gets smaller and smaller. So we'll go ahead and make that a little bit smaller. Outstanding. Now this inset section here is more of a fine tuning. So if you scroll to the left, we're going to move it a little bit to the left. Scroll to the right, it's going to scroll to the right. Vertical, if you scroll to the right, it's going to go up, and then down if you scroll to the left. Now this is just to really fine tune and get it in the exact spot that you want it. And to make big movements, you can actually use this anchor tool here. And where you click here is going to be in direct relation to where the watermark actually lands. And that's pretty cool. And then you, of course, you can rotate as well. So we can make a nice non-obstructive watermark. There we go. So that the viewer can very easily view your image, enjoy the artwork that you've created, but you can also tag your work so that if they wanted to, they could look on a small area of the image and see who was responsible for that image. Now, this is where things get really cool because you're able to really dramatically cut down your workflow. So in the top left corner, you can see custom. And this is where you can actually save preset watermarks. So if you click this drop down, you can see here towards the bottom, you have save current settings as new preset. And then you can give it a name. I'm going to call mine best watermark ever. Click create. And then you can use this watermark in the future. Now, of course, this is an extremely abrasive and offensive watermark. We would never really want to do this, but that's how you use the text options. Now, moving forward, you can also upload a PNG or even a JPEG if you wanted to. I would recommend using a PNG of a graphic styled watermark. And the way you do that is up towards this section here. We have image options. You click choose, and you can navigate to wherever in the world on your computer you saved your graphic, whether it's your logo, maybe it's a little bit better typography than just writing in Comic Sans, and then you can have your own image. Now check this out. This is the watermark I actually use. There we go. We've selected my image here. And then naturally text options are going to be absolutely obsolete because we're not dealing with text, we're dealing with a graphic. So I'm just going to collapse that. And then here we have watermark effects. I have mine set for 50%. Now my size is set to 26%. It actually is pretty large for a watermark, but that's okay. I do that for my own set of reasons, and I answer to the deity that I do or don't believe in for that. It's none of your concern, and just like it's not any of my concern what your philosophy on watermarks is. But the size of your watermark is going to depend on what you want to do. You can make it huge, you can make it super tiny. It's totally up to you. And then of course I have mine offset just a little bit as to not have it run into the very edge of the frame. Then of course I have it saved here, and wham bam, thank you man, we're ready to rock. Now I'm gonna hit cancel on this and kind of show you where this kind of finally all comes together. Check this out. When I go to file export, I can now use this when I export images. So I just set my export location to the desktop. We're good to go. And if I scroll all the way down, you'll see the second to last option is watermarking. And what do you know? You can turn that on and select from your various presets. You can even edit your watermarks from here, but I would recommend just doing it in advance, having it all set up and ready to go so that you don't have to do it on the fly while you're in the middle of something. And that's how you're going to increase your workflow. So this has already been done for myself. So I'm just going to go ahead and export this image. Then I can go over to my desktop and see that, why thank you, my image has been watermarked and it's ready to post online, whether it's Instagram or wherever in the world you're deciding to post to. So I'll go ahead and collapse that and you're ready to go. So there you have it. That's how you use watermarks in Lightroom. And then of course, if I wanted to export every single one of these images with a watermark, you can absolutely do that. That's no problem at all. And you don't have to go through in Photoshop and open up every single one of those images and watermark every one of them, yada, yada, yada. Now, if you want to put the watermark in a very specific location in every photo and it's different, you're constantly changing your placement, then yeah, you're going to need to figure that out on your own. There's not really a way to automate a manual process like that. But hey, if you learned something, hopefully you'll like the video. If you're new, it would be great if you subscribed. And I'm James Young with JamesYoungPhotography.com, and this is Teach Me How to Lightroom.